Morning guys, it's Monday morning. I'm in the studio, which is on a random business park on the outskirts of York, but we're very lucky to have this space. Had some great feedback over the weekend about the prints and what you'd like to see in terms of my posts and what you'd like more insight into. Particularly process comes through really strongly, and a lot of people commented on and messaged about the stories behind the prints as well. And so I thought I'd just have some fun and record, comments about the prints, talk about something, try and make it like a process Monday, if you like. So every Monday, I'll do a little video or a series of videos and talk about one set of prints or what I'm working on in the studio or something about the process that I'm doing. So this week, I thought I'd talk about what I've been working on lately. And it's this series of prints. I've done quite a few. I'll show you a few examples. I'm calling them digital visions. I suppose the story behind them, it's several things. So first of all, they're sort of in the vein or continuing what I've been doing about monoprinting. So monoprinting, as I've explained a few times, printmaking process, handmade printmaking process. So you basically build up the color in layers and you get patterns in the prints by sort of masking off different areas on each layer. Because you use different colors on each layer of the print when you print in, and also because you mix the inks so that they're quite transparent, then as the color builds up, it starts to combine and layer, and it creates new colors and new effects. I'll give you a few examples. Now, the specific idea of these prints was, as well as carrying on the monoprinting, I was thinking, going back to some of my work I did in my MA, and I did some reading, a French guy called Paul Virilio, and a book and an article called The Overexposed City. And one of the key sort of pictures, if you like, that he paints in that is thinking about the way that we increasingly experience the world through screens. I mean, good example, not being too ironic, but I guess you're watching this video hopefully and thinking about that. But basically, we're consuming so much information, so many images, so much news continually through our screens, and yet those screens kind of act to both speed up that information, but also to filter it and to change it potentially and manipulate it. The digital, so pixels, that kind of thing, ones and noughts and ones, all that comes into play. So I was thinking about all of that and thinking, right, let's try and build that into the monoprinting and make some prints that sort of allude to that idea. So I think the general idea about these prints is to make them kind of intriguing, if you like. So there are colors, there are patterns embedded in the print, but you can't see all of it, and you can't sort of grasp all of it because of the darker layer I've printed on top. And that's the idea of sort of, our second-hand interpretation of the world, or visualizing it through screens, if you like. Now, the actual patterns or the tiles you see, where I've got the color showing through. So I don't want to get too nerdy about this, but those of you know me well won't be too surprised. But the patterns, the tile pattern is built up in a spreadsheet. It's just using a matrix of random numbers. And so basically every time I refresh the spreadsheet, I get a different pattern of these tiles. And I kind of like that idea in the context of what we're talking about, because there's an element of this randomness, what we happen to see through a screen at any particular time, the way it is filtered or manipulated or changed, the moment that we view it. There's lots of sort of context and sort of randomness, I suppose, in the print, in the process, and what we finally see. So that's one of the ideas wrapped up in this. So the way I do that is by sort of, as I say, generating the pattern in a spreadsheet, and then making a printing plate out of those patterns. Now this is just a piece of mount board, the stuff you use for picture framing. But drawing the matrix on here and then cutting out the tiles according to the pattern I've generated, or the pattern I've chosen. And I've done lots of these, so you can see there's lots of different sort of patterns, and I kind of like that because I can sort of have them all in the studio, and then it allows me to be a bit more free and intuitive when I'm going through the printmaking process. So I can just pick up a few of these sort of plates, try them on the previous layer, see what I think is going to work, what will let colours and patterns come through and give some kind of pleasing outcome. So, you know, and eventually I'll choose one of these plates to use in the actual print. The other sort of flexibility is clearly you can use both sides, it'll give you a different pattern. You can use it that way up, this way up, again it'll give you a different pattern. So just by making 7 or 8 of these different plates, I end up with lots and lots of creative sort of possibilities for making unique sort of handmade prints. In terms of the way the prints look, so to say, I think the main effect is this sort of distorted view, this hidden view, this pixelization, if that's a word. But also because the sort of darker layer is not put on too thickly, hopefully you can see that, then you can kind of see the underlying patterns coming through in the print. They're just sort of obscured a little bit, shall we say, and I think it makes a more sort of intriguing visual outcome for the print. Or at least, you know, hopefully some of this makes sense, but that's the kind of thought process, that's what's going through my mind when I'm making these. Yesterday I was trying out a different color palette, and I will, after I finish speaking, eventually I'll include some video clips of each layer being printed so you can get a feel for that. But that's just using some blues, some mint color, light turquoise color, and overprinting with this maroon color. So it's a different palette. Be interested to see what you think about the difference in the two color schemes on these. As ever with all of these, any feedback you give me is really welcome. So you can just comment below this post, or just send me a DM if there's anything you'd like to ask, or if you're bewildered by any of what I'm talking about. So a few other examples. That one, that's actually less random, but I do like a nice grid. So again, I think it gives a very different effect, and it sort of removes the randomness in a way, but introduces that element of a more formal structure, which I like as well. So this is the good thing about studio work. You know, all you've got to do is cut some mount board into different patterns, and then just work and play with it and see what comes out and see what you like. There's another one here. So this is, you might see it's slightly different to the same color scheme as one I showed you before, but the navy blue layer on top is mixed a little bit more transparently, so you can see more of the underlying pattern. I don't know how that comes through on the camera, but again, it gives a slightly different effect. These are a slightly different process, because rather than just print the top layer using one of those plates I showed you a moment ago, I've actually built up the whole print using 2 or 3 layers using different patterns. So what you end up with is this kind of pixelization effect. And personally, I really like these. I think they'll, when they're framed up, I think they'll look good. I'm going to do some more of these today as well on a bigger scale. Again, you see the way there's actually only 3 layers of color mixing in this. So there was a magenta I started with, there's a cobalt blue as a second layer, and then a yellow as a third layer. But because of the random sort of collection of patterns in the 3 different plates, what you get is the colors layering up to create other colors. So that purpley color there, that's magenta and blue. The browny, greeny color here is a combination of all 3 colors, the magenta, the blue, and the yellow. The orange comes from magenta and yellow. So again, I love this element of randomness. So I'm not totally in control of what's going to come out on this print, and I like that, because you can just sort of, it's just a more intuitive, accidental, interesting outcome from the process. This was a similar one, but I won't go into too much detail, but same process, but it's using what I call a ghost print. So when you print a layer, there's often a lot of ink still left on the plate, so you can take a second print either from the plate or even from your print at that stage, and then start working with that as a new sort of as a new print. often you have sort of softer colours or slightly more translucent colours, because you know the plate has already given off one layer of colour, so you're using what's left. Again, it's another sort of element of, you know, the accidental almost in the printmaking and the handmade process. You can kind of see what you're getting at each stage and decide whether you want to work with it and decide what you want to do to it next. So there's a few of these, but and a few more at home as well. So right, let's. So how I'm thinking of displaying these prints, I'm going to use some mounts like this in a slightly off-white colour. I've designed the size of the print to specifically fit these mounts in a 40 by 50 frame, so they're kind of a medium-sized print. But basically, when they're mounted up, they'll look something like this. They'll be signed and numbered. Everyone's unique, so it'll just be one out of one. And then I think I'm going to use these birch frames, which I think will suit them, like this one from a previous series. So it'll look something like this, which I think will look good. I'll take some to Printfest, which I'm doing, which is a big printmaking festival in the Lake District at the start of May. If anybody is interested in seeing one before that, then I will have a couple on offer as a pre-Print Fest offer. So again, just direct message me or put a comment in the under this post and I'll get in touch about them and give you a better view when they're framed and mounted. So guys, there's lots more I could talk about on these prints. Anyone who's spoken to me at a print fair knows that my main problem is shutting up when it comes to printmaking, rather than not talking enough. So on another day, I'll talk more about the inks, the other aspects of the process, preparing the paper, sizing, framing, displaying, anything, and I'll do some live sessions and you can see me making a print as well. In the meantime, for these, I'll attach some clips of printing each layer and of some of the final prints. And yeah, well, that's it. Hope you enjoy. Feedback on this would be great, because a lot of people have said, I want to see more about your process and about the prints and the stories behind the prints. So great, I'm so happy to do that, but it makes it so much better if you give me a few comments, messages, anything you want to know more about, then just go for it. Okay, thanks guys, bye.